And we're back with another installment of iTween for Unreal Engine 4 tutorials. This time we're going to talk about interface messages. An interface message in iTween, if you've used the original Unity implementation of iTween, you know about the hash table arguments, hopefully, for onStart, onComplete, and onUpdate. And in the Unreal Engine 4 version, we have onTweenStart, onTweenComplete, onTweenTick, which is the counterpart to onUpdate, and onTweenLoop. And what they allow you to do is send information from the tweening object to any other blueprint in your scene. The exception, of course, being the level blueprint, because that unfortunately does not work with interfaces. It will allow you to send interface messages, but you can't accept interface messages through your level blueprint. So you're going to have a separate blueprint that is equipped to accept interface messages from the iTween interface. So let's set that up now. Going to go into Blueprints, create a new folder, call it UI, and inside of that, create a new user interface widget blueprint. Going to call it Test. Open this bad boy up and throw in a text block. Going to anchor it to the center so we can always see it and make it a variable so we can change some of its parameters. And give it a drop shadow so it's easier to read. Zoom in there. Give a little offset. There we go. That should be easily legible. And now go into the graph and bring in our text block and set its text. Now, what we want to do is set the text to be something when the tween starts or completes or ticks or finishes a loop section. So to do that, we have to equip this blueprint to use the iTween interface. And to do that, you can go to Edit Blueprint Options, scroll down to Interfaces, add IT Interface, and there you go. That's it. Now this can use any iTween interface message that you want to use. So the first one we're going to use is onTweenStart. By the way, you want the event. If you type in onStart, you have the interface message onTweenStart and tween messaging onTweenStart. You don't want either of these. This is what's called inside of the tween, and this is there for no reason. Don't worry about that. This is used inside of the tweening actor's set of instructions. This is something you don't call yourself. You use this event onTweenStart, to set off other events using this event. Let me demonstrate. So, I'm going to plug this in here. So when the tween starts its tweening thing, it's going to set the text of this text block, which right now would just start as saying text block. What we want to say is instead to format text, and I'm going to say blank is starting to tween. I'm going to plug the tween name in there, just convert name to text, and then plug the result in there. And that is half of what you need to do. There actually is a second component to this. So let's go into our scene here. We'll grab this chair that we've been using so far, create a reference to it, and pull out from iTween, move from to. We'll set it off with V, and we will make that the actor to move. we will get actor location, plug that into location from, and then have it tween toward the origin of the world in a matter of 2 seconds. Now, because we're using onTweenStart, we're going to have to dictate which object is going to receive that. This will send off messages no matter what. If you don't put in anything here, it's going to send off the message to the object that is tweening. So it would send it to the chair by default. But the chair does not have any blueprint logic on it. So it won't know what to do with that message. It's going to receive it, but it's not going to know what to do with it. So if we don't want to send it to the chair by default, we're going to have to say specifically where we want this message to go. So we need to set an onStart target. So in order to get that target, we're going to have to put it in our level blueprint somehow. In this case, I will just create widget with context sensitive on. There we go. Going to create test, which is the interface that we just created. And that return object is going to be our onStart target. And we will just add this to viewport so that we can see. All right. So now, if we start the game, we have a text block that really needs some help with the drop shadow. I'm sorry about that. It says text block right now. Press the V key. Now it says none is sta. And the reason for that is because I haven't set a tween name. So I'm going to change this to be move chair and go back into test, into designer, fix this drop shadow issue. This is not going to work for anyone. Alright, that should be a lot better, a lot easier to read. And I'm also going to size to content so we will always be able to see what is on screen. Try that again. Forgot to compile. There we go. Move share is starting to tween because it's passing through the tween name that we specified right here. Now there are other objects as well, or other messages rather. Event on tween tick. Now, event on tween tick is mandatory for the float and color tweening operations and possibly other tween operations in the future that don't take in a specific actor of any kind. Move from to, rotate from to, all that stuff uses a specific actor, whether it be an actor or a component or a widget. This will pass through right now the actor tweening, which would be chair right, because that is the actor that we're moving. We're using actor move from to, so it's going to pass through an actor. If we use component from to or widget from to or anything like that, it's going to not pass through an actor, but pass through a primitive component or pass through a widget, depending on which one we're using. So in this case, on event tick, we have those 4 regular things that we had before, plus delta seconds, that is the number of seconds that it takes for the tweening object actor to tick, and also float value and color value if we're using float or color tweening operations, which we're not in this situation, so it's not going to return anything. And then interp point on spline. An interp point on spline, if you're using one of the spline operations, such as move to point on spline or rotate to point on spline, will return the distance along your spline relative to its duration. So if your spline has a duration of 1 and we're halfway through the spline, it's going to return 0.5. If you have a duration of 3 and we're halfway along the spline, it's going to return 1.5. So what we're going to do here excuse me, is set text for this text block, and we're going to actually set, if I can format text, plug that in there. I'm going to say delta seconds, and then pass in delta. Convert that to text, and there we go. Now we probably won't see the words move chair starting to tween, because once it starts ticking, it's going to stomp out the last message. The first message is still going to fire, move chair starting to tween, but it is not going to show up afterwards because tick is going to start happening immediately. So I'm just going to plug the test widget into our onTick target, and now it will receive the onTick message, which is the number of delta seconds. Or delat seconds, whatever. And then there is event onTween complete. An event onTween complete will happen once the tween is done, whether you end it early or it ends on its own naturally, with an end of the alpha, with an end of the, or just getting to its 2 parameter. Once it reaches the end of it and it is not looping, it will complete on its own. And this will pass in actor, component, or widget tweened, and tween name, and float value and color value if you're using those, and also successful transform. So if you are using move or rotate operations and passing in sweep as true, then it will check to see if it has been swept by anything. So if you have an object in front of your other object and it stops that object as it's tweening, then successful transform or return is false. If it gets to its endpoint, then successful transform or return as true. If you are using a operation like scale or float from 2 or color from 2, those do not use sweep, so they will always return true as a successful transform. So again, if you're not using some of these parameters, they're not going to return anything useful. So event on complete, again, we will just set text just because it's an easy thing to do. Set text. And the text will be T is done tweening. And T will be the tween name. Plug that in there, plug that in there, and I'll just take off event tick. Then head into our level blueprint. I'm going to take it out of the onTick target. If you don't know how to do this, you hold down Control and grab your input, and then you can move it to a different input. We'll put it in onComplete and start that again. Move chair is starting to tween. Move chair is done tweening. And finally, there is event on loop. Now this is actually event on tween loop section, and I will explain in a moment what a loop section is and how it's different from a loop. But I'm just going to actually drag out a branch that will return whether it's playing backward or not. And in addition to the regular stuff that we usually pass through, like actor, component, widget tween, tween name, float value, color value, we also have a number of loop sections, loop type, whether or not it's playing backward, and interp point on spline, which is also available in event on tick. And what a loop section is when you are using a loop, you have three options: once, rewind, and back and forth. So whenever you rewind, after the tween completes, it will snap back to its original position and then start tweening again. That is one loop section. Whenever it snaps back, that is a loop section completed. So if you are using rewind, it will always throw back one more loop section than the last time before it looped. If you are using back and forth, however, it will only return another loop section. Actually, it will return twice as many loop sections, because a loop section is considered to be whenever it starts to move after it has completed once. So let me demonstrate for you. So it is rewinding one loop section, two loop sections, three loop sections, whenever it goes back to start. If I were to change this to be back and forth, that's one loop section right there. That's two loop sections. That's three loop sections. So a full loop is not a loop section. A loop section is every time a tween stops and starts again, if you're looping. So we're going to see if it's playing backward. And if it's playing backward, we will set the text to be playing backward. If not, then we will set it to be playing forward. Pretty simple stuff. Drag this down here, set text, do one more of those, set text. True and false. Looping backward, looping forward. So this will fire every time there is a loop section that completes. And this output will tell you whether you're playing rewind or you're playing back and forth. So let's play that just to demonstrate. Starting to iTween because I haven't looped yet. Oh, almost forgot. I need to set test as the on loop target. There we go. We'll do that again. Move chair starting to tween, looping backward, looping forward, looping backward. So if you need to get the number of full loops from your on tween loop event, and you are playing back and forth, you just have to divide the number by 2. You may end up with a remainder if it is an odd number, so just be wary of that. Now, what if you have multiple tweens all going to the same blueprint? What do you do then? Well, that's why we have tween name being passed through here. Can make a little more room here. Put another set text, and I will put a branch in here. So we're going to check the tween name equals so if the tween name of whatever is sending a message to this blueprint using the interface is equal to move chair, it's going to set text to hey. If it's anything else, it's going to set it to man. Hey, because it is called move chair. Change the name on that. It becomes man, because the name that it's checking is again not move chair. And if we have multiple tweens in one spot, we do move from 2 and call it with... I apologize for that. I had a little crash, so I'm going to try that again. This time I'm going to use the B key because the C key seems to crash my editor. So, going to do a move from 2. Set off with the B key. And I'm going to move the table. Create a reference to that. And get its actor location. Plug that in for from and have it move toward the origin. And give it a tween name of right. Give the other one a tween name of left. We're going to set the same targets for on start. I'm going to cut off on loop and turn off loops. And we'll set on complete for it as well, just so we can drive this home. And that should be good to go. So when we play this, V will move the chair, B will move the table. Now you can see there, inside the graph, that when it finished, it gave us the tween name and whether or not it was done tweening. And it seemed to not fight about it at all. And that's a good thing because we don't want any fighting. Man, man, and left is done tweening, and now right is done tweening. But what if we have them both going at the same time? Like with on tick. Well, we're going to have to check the tween name again. Go to branch. And we'll check to see the tween name if it is equal to left then we will set the delta seconds. If it's not, then we will set text again to nada, not nad. There we go, false. And make sure that we have on tick target set. Play that. Delta seconds. Nada. Let's try doing it at the same time. Delta seconds and nada. Now nada takes precedence because it sends its message directly after the original tween, because we pressed V first, the chair starts moving. We press B after the table starts moving. So its instruction set comes after the chair's instruction set, so it overrides it. If we were to instead press the B key first to move the table, we get nada, then press the V key, now we're getting the delta seconds. Then the chair finishes its tween before the table does, and it goes back to nada.